till the courts of heaven ring. Oh, the love that sought me. Oh, the blood that bought me. Oh, the grace that brought me to the fold of God. The grace that brought me to the fold of God. He died for me while I was sinning, needy and poor and blind. He whispered to assure me, I found thee, thou art mine. I've never heard a sweeter voice. It made my aching heart rejoice. Oh, the love that sought me. Oh, the blood that bought me. Oh, the grace that brought me to the fold of God. Grace that brought me to the fold of God. Upon His grace I'll daily ponder and sing anew His praise, with all adoring wonder. His blessings I retrace. It seems as if eternal days are far too short to sing His praise. Oh, the love that sought me. Oh, the blood that bought me. Oh, the grace that brought me to the fold of God. Grace that brought me to the fold of God. And oh, the love that sought me. Oh, the blood that bought me. Oh, the grace that brought me to the fold of God. Grace that brought me to the fold of God.
Hey, Hub City, good morning. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching, taking the time. I hope you're doing well. If you want to grab a Bible, turn to James chapter 2. We're going to dive right into it today. We're continuing in our James series. We're at James chapter 2 at the very end of chapter 2, verses 25 to 26. I'm going to read it, pray, and then we'll dive into what James has for us this morning. So let's go. James chapter 2, verse 25 through 26. And in the same way, was not also Rahab the prostitute justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? For as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for opportunity just to come into your word, to revisit some incredible stories of your people's past and how you were faithful through so many trials. And God, just thank you. I pray for this word today that however it is communicated, God, I just pray that it speaks louder than just words, speaks to our heart, to our mind, shapes us how you want us to be shaped. And we give you this time, God. Thank you for our community. Thank you for what you're doing in and through the city of Albany. We give this to you. Pray in your name. Amen. Sometimes it's easy to read the scriptures and you see these names like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and just kind of pass over it, right? Just be like, yeah, I've heard those names before. There's not a lot of deep emotion to those names. If you're of Jewish heritage, those come with a lot of history and knowledge about God, knowledge about the people of God, deep, rich history of that. But for the biblical authors especially, these names carry weight. These names carry so much history. They carry a lot of the stories of God's faithfulness that we can see when we say things like God is the same as he is today. We need to know those stories. We need to be reminded of those stories. These people are names in significant points or they're names of events and stories and significant points of the people of God's history and story. So in our passage last week, he threw out the name Abraham, offering up his son Isaac. And if you missed that, you can go watch that. And remember the letter of James is to the 12 tribes of Israel. So it's reminding the people, remember where you came from. Remember what the basis, foundational of your faith is, to go back to that story, specifically how God showed himself, revealed himself to Abraham in that story. But in particular, James is trying to argue this point that he says in verse 24 of chapter 2, that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. So to end this point, and what he's kind of arguing for, he ends chapter 2 by throwing out another name that again carries lots of story, carries lots of weight, and he throws out this name Rahab. Okay, so maybe you've heard of the name Rahab before, you've heard of her. We're going to dive into her story today. It's an incredible story. If you have your Bible, turn to Joshua chapter 2. And while you do that, I'm going to tell you a few things about Rahab. So what you need to know about Rahab was a Canaanite. So in tradition, Canaan was the land that God was giving to the Israelites. And so obviously, as they were being taken over, the Canaanites were pretty opposed to the Israelites. And there's a whole backstory to that. It's a longer story, but they come up to one of the biggest places in the land of Canaan, one of the most fortified cities. Named is Jericho. So you've probably heard of Jericho before. Rahab is a prostitute living in Jericho. And in many regards, Rahab was viewed very lowly, kind of unrespected, and she seems very much like an unlikely hero. But let's dive into her story today. And before that, I want to also do an update of where the people of God are in this story. So Moses, God used Moses to bring the people out of Egypt. The people are going in the desert. Moses is leading them, and Moses ends up dying, and Joshua takes over. So we're in the spot where Joshua takes the mantle from Moses. Now he is leading the people of God. And one of the first things that he encounters is they have this huge river, the Jordan River, that they have to cross. But on the other side of the river is Jericho. So they're facing up against this massive, fortified, heavily militarized fortress. It's in their way. They have to go. And kind of like Goliath was for David, like Jericho is for Joshua, right? So he sees this kind of insurmountable mountain of like, how am I gonna climb this or move this? And so not seeing an obvious way forward, as the story goes, Joshua 2, Joshua decides to send 2 spies from the Israelites into the city to see if there's any weaknesses. And this is where the people of God encounter Rahab. So follow along, chapter 2. We'll go through the story, and I'll say some thoughts as I have it. So let's enter into this story. So Joshua chapter 2. And Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go, view the land, especially Jericho." And they went and came into the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. Okay, so first of all, the 2 men, like you could just imagine a conversation, like let's go down the checklist of infiltration basics 101, right? Wear all black to blend in, check. Got concealed weapons? Check. Fake IDs? Check. Pit stop at the local brothel? Let's do it, right? When in Jericho. But this is actually a super strategic plan by these Israelite spies. Think about it. Where is the one place in a hostile environment that is used that's used for various individuals to come and go at all hours of the night, Nobody really knows what's happening, even though people know what's happening. And then also, who would know all the dirty little secrets about Jericho? All the officials, all the corruption that happens there. The people in this place would know more than other people. So it's actually a brilliantly scandalous move here by the Israelites, these two spies. So verse 2, but it was told to the king of Jericho, behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out our land. So someone snitched. Someone saw them and is like, hey, I know these guys. I'm going to go tell the king. Verse 3, then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land. Now think about Rahab. Think about her situation in Jericho. We're not really told the context of why she's a prostitute, where she comes from, that kind of thing. But this is her chance, if you just think humanly speaking. If she turns these men over, she could get good graces with the king of Jericho, the king of that little city-state land, right? Maybe she could get out of this prostitution gig. Maybe she could get more money. She could finally be respected, finally be known, right? This is her chance. But verse 4, but the woman had taken the two men and hidden them. And she said, true, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them. But then we're revealed to us what really happened. But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them with the stalks of flax that she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords, and the gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. So I don't know what, but something had compelled this Canaanite prostitute to protect these foreigners in her land. Something has compelled her to show kindness to strangers, even when it meant she's going to miss out or lose out on personal gain. And as she goes and she regroups with the men she's protecting, she tells them what has compelled her. Verse 8, before the men lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you, when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who are beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted. And there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on earth below. Wow. Like, we aren't told in the context of the text, but I imagine the Israelite spy faces. Like dismay, shock, overjoyed. Probably a number of emotions welled up of this Canaanite prostitute declaring their God to be the God that is doing all this, right? And it's funny that the weakness that they were seeking in the city, it wasn't a weakness after all in the city. It was the knowledge that there is this Yahweh God, this unstoppable force that is headed their way. Like, the weakness is God's too strong. God is strong. God is Yahweh. So she continues. She says, now then, verse 12, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you also will deal kindly with my father's house, and give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. Verse 14, and the men said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you. And then she has an escape plan. Verse 15, then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was built into the city wall, so that she lived in the wall. And as the story goes, she tells them, because the men are pursuing her, go hide in the hills for 3 days before you return to your camp. And they told her, when we come back to the city, you need to tie us this scarlet cord around your house so that we know which house not to destroy. We know the people to protect because we want to keep our promise to you. And that is setting up the famous context for the fall of Jericho, right? God's people finally do show up to Jericho. They finally show up at the front doors. And real quick, just quick tangent, right, of just that when we have that context in mind to set up the fall of Jericho. When you just read the fall of Jericho, if you just say, hey, I'm just going to go read a cool story of God, Joshua chapter 6, I'm going to go read Joshua or Jericho, and all of a sudden ideas of like French peas and purple Slurpees, thank you VeggieTales, comes to mind, and like people just laughing at the Israelites saying, you silly Israelites, you're circling around us, like what are you doing, But in this context of the scriptures, what did Rahab say the people were like? Are they pompous and confident and laughing at the Israelites? She says, when we heard about you, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. So now with that context, imagine the Israelite army, the one they are afraid of, comes to their front step. And instead of just like knocking down the doors or whatever, what they do is they just start circling. They just start circling around the city for 7 days, like a wolf circling its prey. Like how more intimidating can it get, right? Looking for weaknesses, looking where to strike, and you can just imagine the Canaanite people in Jericho just trembling, right? And as the story goes, 7 days go by. On the 7th day, just a roar that no one has ever heard before. They blow trumpets, they're screaming, they're yelling, and literally the impenetrable walls of Jericho just fall down. It crumbles, just like she said that their hearts and their fighting spirit had just crumbled, had just fallen away. And if you've ever been incredibly scared or anxious, I'm sorry, because that's not a great feeling, but you just feel it. There's no strength. Your arms, you can't even lift your arms. You're just in shock. You're paralyzed, right? Just think literally the city walls, concrete, or whatever it was made out of, was fallen down. But if you skip to Joshua chapter 6 in this story, verse 22, Joshua 6:22, but the two men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, Joshua said, go into the prostitute's house and bring out from there the woman and all who belong to her as you swore to her. They keep their promise. So the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and mother and brothers and all who belonged to her. And they brought all her relatives and put them outside the camp of Israel. Man, it's beautiful. It's a crazy story with the context of that. And I love how the story of Rahab ends, not just for the saving grace of God to Rahab and her family, but that the Israelites, they go into a city ready for war, and what they happen to shout out is the only one we're going to save is the prostitute. And her family, right? Because out of all these people, out of everything we experienced, it's the prostitute that was kind to us. The prostitute who sheltered us and protected us, right? And that is where it's just crazy, because it's so like God to take the unlikely hero in the story. And it's just a beautiful reminder that Jesus didn't just come for the strong and the rich and the smart, but he came for the poor and the meek and those who are willing to humble themselves. Luke 19:10 says, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. And maybe it's confusing because in our James passage, we're talking about works of Rahab, and now we're kind of talking about salvation, but isn't that kind of the point, right? It's by faith that these works are done. And let's continue in that thought. So the author of Hebrews in chapter 11 kind of has this hall of fame of faith, right? Just talking about all these people and why they were justified by their faith. They talk about Abraham, that it was by faith when Abraham was tested that offered up his son Isaac. And then later on in Hebrews 11, verse 31, it says, by faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. So Israel was saved out of Egypt and called to be different. Rahab was called to be different and was saved into Israel and the promises of God. So this works and faith, it's this beautifully intertwined kind of ball of yarn, right? You don't quite know where it starts, where it begins, whatever, but it's this beautiful, James is saying it's this thing. Faith and works go together. It's everywhere at the same time, right? And as James in just one paragraph has gone from the great Abraham, he says this name and again, it's to the 12 tribes of Israel that everyone's cheering and clapping and yeah, Abraham, right? To the famous prostitute Rahab, and I don't know their experience. Maybe they're yeah, it was great. She's also just so powerful. He's arguing, man, from Abraham to Rahab, they didn't just have this personal faith. They just but their lives looked different. Their actions reflected what was on the inside and what was happening on a soul level. And we often call this kind of our spiritual life, meaning the very core of us, being our soul, being the very essence of who we are. And for some of us, spiritual life is like this bonus, right? It's like this extra bonus part of your life that it's like, yeah, if I could have a great spiritual life, that's awesome, right? It's this part of us that, like, if we're doing great, God will bless us. And if we're not doing great, then like, oh, well, like I should probably read more or read my Bible more or pray more or whatever. Or like when we find a cure for COVID-19, it's like, well, then my spiritual life will grow, right? But for the biblical authors, the spiritual life or life in the Spirit, it's not an extra part of your life. It's the very essence of your life. It's like that ball of yarn. It's intertwined with it, right? And this is beautiful. I want to think about this. So the word spirit can be translated wind or breath, right? And James is kind of going more on the breath side of things. He uses this clever wordplay at the end of the chapter, at the end of chapter 2, as an example of how important the Spirit is. It's like breath in a body, right? As James puts it, verse 26 of chapter 2, for as the body apart from the Spirit is dead. Now think what he's doing here before we finish that verse. How often do you think about breathing? Most likely, you only think about breathing when it's hard, or like you have a shortage of breath for some reason. You might think about your breath like right after you ate some garlic, right? You might think about breath before you go move in to kiss your girlfriend or your spouse, right? But the majority of the time, breathing in our body goes unnoticed, but very much appreciated. So as James puts it, you take the breath or spirit out of the body, and what do you have? A lifeless corpse, meaninglessness. Like what was the point, right? And then as he concludes the verse, he says, just like that, you take the breath out of the body, it's kind of meaningless. Just like that, he says, so also faith apart from works is dead. You take the works out of faith, what is it? What does it do? Now remember, this letter is written to the 12 tribes of Israel, like we've said. They know the Rahab story well. But again, it's a fascinating tactic for James to say, hey, Israel, hello, people of God, are you out there? Remember when the Canaanite prostitute showed us what faith in action looked like? We need that reminder. We need that reminder today. Like we've mentioned before in the series, James, he takes a lot of his concept from Jesus' teachings on the Sermon on the Mount. So Matthew chapter 7, which is kind of the ending of that teaching, Jesus teaches this, verse 17, Matthew 7:17. So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. There's a lot of double negatives in there, but so healthy tree equals good fruit. Unhealthy tree equals bad fruit. So let's take that to James' concept. Healthy faith equals good works. Unhealthy faith, no works, very little, complacency, doing it out of obligation. You fill in the blank there. So for us at Hub City, here's a direct application for us going off of this context of James and his concept. You may be at a place where your faith is just solid. Your spiritual life is so intertwined with your just regular life. I mean, it's just, you can't separate it so good, can't compartmentalize it. You're thriving. It compels you. Your faith compels you towards good works as the Spirit guides and works through you. And I would say, please teach us how to do that. Please, we need mentors in this area. We need people to help us with that. How can we bring that back and not have it be so separated from our regular life, right? We're desperate for mentors in that area. You may be at a place this morning where you feel like you have this faith and you want to do something about it, but it's hard to know what. It's anxiety producing to think about talking about Jesus to your coworkers, your family. It always brings up anger. It always brings up these arguments, right? It doesn't seem like your gifts or what you can offer is a big deal to the church. So it's like, why bother, right? You just kind of feel stuck in this personal relationship with God, and that's about it. And it's out of your control, right? You might be there. You might be at a place in your spiritual life where you said a prayer when you were 4 years old, and that's good enough. Right? If God wants to use me, he knows what couch I'm sitting on. He can bust down the door and come find me, right? You might be there. You may be at a place where your faith is shattered. You're mad at God. He didn't show up for you. You're disappointed where he didn't do something in your life, and you just don't want to do a lick of anything in his name. You could be in 1,000 different places right now in your spiritual life, and the truth is you might be in 1,000 different places on the journey of your spiritual life. But there's a truth for where you are at this morning that I just want to just remind us in. If you are listening to this, if you're sitting there, your eyes work, your whatever, you're still breathing. Like just breathe. Take a big breath. Just breathe, right? You can be the most depressed, anti-God person in the world, but if you're alive, you still have breath, right? No matter where you're at on the spectrum, maybe God didn't go anywhere. Maybe you didn't go anywhere. Maybe we just all forgot to notice the breath, right? God gave us something that is just so natural in our body, the spirit, this breath that goes into our lungs and out, and it gives us life. Without that breath, what are we? What are we doing? And it's this constant reminder as we live out human existence that we are just constantly breathing. It's something, sometimes we're aware of it, usually not. It just happens, right? We very much appreciate it. But faith is kind of more like breath in a body, right? It's not this event. It's not this huge thing that when I'm doing well, I have faith. If I go to the beach, I have faith because I see the great waters, whatever. It's just all around us all the time. The awe and beauty of it is the simplicity of it. It doesn't always start with this grandiose Rahab-like story of some radical change of heart and saving lives and figuring out what ministry you're going to do and how you're going to end world hunger, right? That's all great stuff, but it starts with recognizing you're still breathing. You have your breath. You have your body. You have your mind, your heart. And what could you do with those things? What could you do with what God's already given you? Well, Luke 10:27, there's other passages like this. They say, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. The greatest commandment, ironically, goes back to the basics. It's not this thing that all the elite Christians get to do. It goes back to like, this is fundamental humanity, right? Are you alive? Do you have breath in your lungs? Good. Let's start there. You are closer to God than you think you are. And here's an exercise I want to leave us with, and I will commit to doing this week. You can play around with it, obviously. It's just an idea. With your breathing, as a reminder, a daily reminder of the faith that just it acts, it works. There's just this faith doesn't just stay in our body, but it breathes out. It causes us to live, right? With your breathing, I would encourage you to set a timer for 3 times a day. It's like 5-minute timer. You can just do breakfast, lunch, and dinner if that's easy, right? Whatever's easy for you. And time yourself for 5 minutes. And during those 5 minutes, 15 minutes a day, 3 times 5 minutes, just close your eyes and just notice your breathing. Just take time to stop and breathe. And did you know that, just a quick Google search, you can do this, that just some of the benefits of literally taking that small amount of time a day, I think it even said 10 minutes a day just to stop and breathe, reduces stress levels in your body, lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, can improve diabetic symptoms. This was just like the top 10, right? Reduce depression, better manage chronic pain, better regulate your body's reaction to stress and fatigue. I mean, like, what? Just from noticing the thing we do 1,000,000 times a day already, just to stop and do that. Now, before you write me off as like, oh, great, we just hired a new yoga instructor, for Hub City, it doesn't just stop there, right? It's not just about breathing. Remember, James says, for as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. So the positive spin of these sentences is, for as the body united with the spirit, united with its breath, its spirit is alive, so also faith united with works is alive, right? When you unite your body with your breath, your body comes alive. And this, when you take the time to breathe, this is the opportunity to ask God for something. Just to breathe and to notice the breath and say, God, just like my breathing is so natural, just like my breathing just keeps me alive and it keeps me going, and I need to reduce my stress. I need to relieve anxiety and depression, whatever the case is, right? It's the opportunity to actually ask God to reveal to you, how can my faith be lived out? It's not necessarily something that we just have to figure out. You have this faith and then God says, now go figure it out, right? Actually, God wants to use you. You have unique skills. You have unique giftings. God has put you in a context that's unique. So ask God, how can my faith in you, my belief in you, how can that be lived out? What are the works? Give me works to do, right? And it's kind of scary. I don't know if you've ever done that. I don't know if you've asked God, God, use me today. I just want to be used for your glory, right? It's a dangerous prayer. Christy, my wife, she worked at Starbucks when we were first married. And she would tell me just the most unreal, but like classic stories where she'd be working with a coworker and they'd have these good conversations and she'd feel this burden, this pull to kind of like, I kind of want to like broach the subject of Jesus. But, you know, for a lot of people, you enter into religion and it just shuts off whatever their thing is, so for her, she would work with these coworkers and then all of a sudden she would come home and she'd pray. Sometimes we'd pray together. Often she'd pray alone. She'd just say, God, just use me for this coworker. I'd like to be used for this. And without fail, the next shift, her coworker would like walk up to her and be like, hey, so do you know God? Can you tell me about God? You know, just like, of course, you know, you just kind of almost roll your eyes of like, yeah, that's, of course you would ask me that because I prayed it. But now I'm going to, but then you have to trust God that he will provide you with the words to say. He provided you with the opportunity, and now he's going to provide you with the words, right? Jesus himself says that the Spirit will help remind you of what I taught you, right? The Spirit that's living in you, that same kind of, just like it's breathing, you just can't help it. It's just coming out. The scriptures are just coming out. So take it or leave it. But if you do believe God is real, then seeking his heart, his guidance, and his wisdom, and how you can specifically live out your faith in your context is the best next step. If on that scale you're like, I just don't know what to do, I don't know how to move forward, take it or leave it. But I think that's the best step. Just take time, breathe, notice how are you doing, what's going on in your life, and then say, God, I want to live for you. Will you reveal to me? Will you use me? Will you show me how I can do that and what I can do moving forward? So Hub City, I want to encourage you to remember the story of Rahab, just like James is encouraging us, that James is pulling out these incredible stories of Israel's past as reminders that our faith is not just these religious exercises, but a life compelled by a heavenly Father, right? Compelled to stop, breathe, look around us at who we can love today, right? How we can use our heart, soul, strength, mind to love God and to love others. So that's what I want to respond to today. So today, if you will join me as a response to our good God that loves us, wants us, this Heavenly Father, will you please commit like me to doing something that just helps us recognize the beauty of what God has already given us, to exercise with our breath, to know that you are given life, that the same way breath brings life into your body, the Spirit will bring life into your faith. And your faith will work. Your faith will just exude out good works. And if we take the intentional time to ask God to reveal the nature of your faith and how he wants you to live that out, we have a beautiful opportunity to just be before our God today and ask him that as his children. And I would encourage you too to please continue in the worship guide. We put intentional prayers in there. We put guides for kids. If you don't know how to talk to your kids about God or just want ideas or whatever, Jesse has some incredible stuff. Austin has some great worship, some ideas. And we want you to continue to walk through this. We want it to be for you, for your worship. Just use it however you want. Continue in communion, whatever elements are available to you. My kid, we use orange juice and crackers at our house, and it's silly, but it's just the reminder of saying, man, Jesus gave his life. Jesus gave everything for us. And so if we're going to sit back and not give everything, it just feels less than what we are blessed to do. Hub City, I love you. I hope you have a great Sunday. I hope the story of Rahab just invigorates you, that we can show kindness. Our faith can work. We have a mission. We can do something. And I just am so thankful for James 2. Go back and read it. Read Joshua 2. Read Joshua 6. Teach your kids these stories. It's just such a good thing. So love you, Hub City. I will see you next week, and have a great Sunday.
Come out of sadness wherever you've been. Come brokenhearted. Rescue begin. Come find your mercy. Oh sinner, come kneel. all who are broken, lift up your face. A wanderer, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are. There's hope for the hopeless and all those who strayed. Come sit at the table and come taste the grace. There's rest for the weary, rest that endures. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can cure. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame, and all who are broken, lift up your face. A wanderer, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are. There's joy for the morning, oh sinner, be still. The earth has no sorrow that heaven can heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can heal. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame, and all who are broken, lift up your face. A wanderer, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, and come as you are. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are.